All right, I'm about to do a quick video here on how to check your own brakes. I've talked about this in other videos about how you should not buy a new vehicle for a farm vehicle, buy a used vehicle. Even if you sink $1,000 in, you know, at least there's $1,000 worth of fixed stuff in there instead of the questionable amount, and you'll always be under budget. So brakes are one of those things, along with changing oil, that I'm absolutely shocked that people pay other people to do, especially how quick and easy it is. I've talked about in other videos, you just need a simple socket set. Mine is in my bag because my case fell apart, but a 2-ton jack as well will, 2-ton jack will work. And so what I have here are my tools. And so I have my, I think it's a 2-ton or a 1-ton jack. And then the silver thing is called the breaker bar. These quite often come on sale for about 15 bucks, and they're really handy for taking off really industrially tight nuts. I had to use it when I did the free ride-on mower refurbish. I had to do a lot of the nuts were rusted on. And then in my bag I have my socket set of a variety of sizes, and then my impact gun, which is my #1 tool that I use on the farm, which is just handy for taking the things off really quickly. So that's really what you need. So I think the jack was maybe 100 bucks used. I think we got it on sale for 70, and then the socket set was roughly about 50 bucks, and you can quickly check your brake pads. So that's what you're going to need. The symptoms of your brakes going are, or something could be wrong with the rotor that the wheel spins on, is that you're going to get some sort of chatter, like when you slowly start pressing down your brakes, it's only touching a little bit. That means that the rotor is not even, so it's only touching on certain parts, and sometimes you can take it to a machine shop to get refaced, which is cheaper than buying a whole new rotor. As long as it's not been refaced before, you can only do it once. So that can be cost saving. The other thing is you're going to hear the squeak inside of the brake pad as it goes through. The brake pad is mounted with a screw, and what happens is as the brake pad wears, that screw becomes evident, and screw is the best term. And what happens is that screw starts to touch your rotor and it starts to squeak, and it's very intentional to basically say, hey, you need to change your brakes. The worst is if you hear grinding, which means that your pad is completely gone and you're steel on steel. At that point, you really risk destroying your entire caliper, which is what pinches your wheel or your rotor. And what can happen is the piston can come out too far. If that gets pushed out, your whole caliper will be toast. So grinding, squeaking is loose because it can also just be a dirty wheel. And there's some brakes that I've gotten, brake pads, that will just squeak no matter what I do, no matter how much I clean the rotor. So those are symptoms of your brakes going. And I am talking about the front brakes, which are a pad or a shoe. Drum brakes are usually on the back, and that's a completely different mechanism where you have a drum in your wheel, and on the inside of that drum there are these pads that push up. Those are a little different. So what we'll be talking about today is brake pads, and I'll show you on 2 different vehicles, my minivan as well as my Kia, about what that looks like and how you can quickly diagnose that. Okay, as you saw in that video, what I had to do was I raised the vehicle. What you want to do is just jack it up a little bit. You want to loosen your bolts first, because if you try and loosen your bolts while the tire's up in the air, your tire's just going to spin over and over again. So you need to make sure it's touching the ground. First, you just loosen the bolts. In case they're really tight, all you have to do is take your wrench or your ratchet, sorry. What you can do is you can put it like this, and you can step on it and you can slowly move, but don't jump on it. That causes braking. You just want to try and push with your actual leg muscles, and then that's usually enough to loosen that. You also have a wrench in the back of your vehicle in hatchbacks. They're quite often underneath your hatchback trunk, I guess you would call it. So you crack them first, you lift it up, and then you finish the job and you pull this off, and this is where you are. So make sure we're talking the same language. What happens is on a front wheel car, the transmission is back there, and then your axle comes out here onto the rotor. This is your rotor. That was the part that I was talking about in the very beginning of the video that can get loose and worn. If you see any grooves in here, like a record, and there's like a cut in it, that's really bad. That can wear your make your rotor weaker and actually collapse when it's being squeezed. So this is your caliper over here. This is the part that receives hydraulic fluid from your brakes, and then inside of here is where your pads are, and then that's the part that's going to wear and eventually cause the squeaking in the legs. So what I'm going to do is, a lot of vehicles just actually have a bolt here and a bolt here, and that's all that's holding is usually 2 bolts. And so you pull that off and the whole assembly comes off, this whole piston comes off the rotor, and the pads will actually fall out. They fall out very easily. There's usually just a spring holding them in. And then we can see what the level of wear is on both of them and see if there's more wear on one than the other. You can't just take face value on this one. You should actually be looking at both. So we'll see what the wear is like and then take it from there. So this here is your piston. Don't worry about any kind of rust, but basically one of the pads sits on here. This is that part that I said if you start hearing grinding, it becomes really risky because this piston pushes out, and eventually it can get damaged. It happened to me when I was younger with a little Honda I had. So you make sure when you're doing this, you don't want to let this just hang by itself. If you are going to put it down, just make sure it's safe and secure. This is the hydraulic line here, and you don't want to put much pressure on it. So I'm going to take you to the other side here. So this is where your pads are. What happens is, in this case, I'm going to just dismount from here. What's going to happen is on here, there's actually like a little notch that keeps it in place. That pressure is coming up, and that's what does that. That's what helps keep it in place. So what we're able to do is you can kind of see right here how it wiggles out, and then it just pops out, and there it is. The reason that groove is in there is to collect brake dust, so it doesn't actually jam out the brakes. I'd say that's very good. We're at a very good point with that side. So then let's have a look at the other side. Equally same amount of wear, so we're pretty good. There's nothing here to indicate that maybe my squeaking is just dirty pads, and what I can use is use brake pad cleaner. It's very specific, it's non-lubricating, it evaporates, and it helps clean some of this grime off that you see and can stop squeaking, but not always. You can also spray your pads with it. So, assuming I was actually replacing these and they're bad, I would just take the next ones, and what happens is, you can't really see it on the back, so I'll just tuck that back there for a second. All you do is you take your new pad, assuming it's that, and again, these are all going to be different. See how there's, see if I can get a shot of it. There's a little spring down there, and it all just kind of fits in like Lego. And then this top part goes in and pushes in, boom, it's done.